I'm not saying I made the right decision. In fact, I beat myself up about it every day. But I'm pretty sure I did what Amber would have wanted me to do.
Okay, and what about your little walkabout? Your disappearing act? Do you think she would have approved of that?
Well, I came back, didn't I? Look, I'm only going through with this election thing so I can call the shots. If I win, I'm gonna take the city apart brick by brick to find her.
Welcome to Series 3, Episode 46 of Conversations on Eagle Mountain, a podcast about the tribe. I'm your host, Lance, and joining the podcast panel today is Liz.
Oh.
Sabine.
Hi.
And Tamsin.
Hello.
With episode notes done by Matt and myself. So Series 3, Episode 46. The screenplay was done by David Fox. It was directed by Danny Mulholland. And the episode synopsis was read out by Sabine.
Ellie's dedication to telling a fair story lands her in hot water, while Pride is keen to keep his own news under wraps. The new currency has varying success rates, and Ebony begins to weave a web for Ned.
Alright, so a new day dawns on Tribe World, and we are immediately presented with the revelation that May and Pride spent the night together.
Listen, May. If we're going to be working as a team together on this, can we keep it a secret that we're...
An item? You're ashamed to be with me.
No, it's just while this project's underway. I don't want the others to think that we're just going off to be alone. Do you mind?
Just for now?
So panel, we have to talk about Pride. What do you make of his treatment of May here?
It feels as if they're determined to ruin his character.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the version of Pride we first saw when he came in is so different to this version that we've got now. And Pride is embarrassed to be with May. And he's just so cowardly. I can't even speak. I can't put it into words. I'm going to need someone more articulate. Because this is just... we were talking before this started about KC and if they were potentially going to ruin his character in season 4. And they have done this with Pride. They have ruined his character. He is not the character, like I feel, at least. I don't feel like he's the character we met in those opening episodes. That's me.
He's no longer doing the name Pride any justice.
No, it should be Prejudice.
Yep.
It's going to suck. I do think this is interesting way for him to suck because I don't think it's May he's embarrassed of or ashamed of. It's more that he doesn't want anyone to know that he's like anyone else and would succumb to his baser desires. He wants to seem like the better man for Amber, the better choice. And yet here he is so lonely and desperate for some sort of physical validation that he'll sleep with a girl that he's not even into. And if anyone finds out that he's sleeping with May, then he may be expected to be more committed to her, which he clearly isn't interested in being. He wants to hit it and quit it for the comfort. And so I don't think it's even May. It's not her particular. I think he'd be this way about anybody that he was just sleeping with, because then he has to answer for the relationship if anyone finds out that he and May are sleeping together. Either he has to answer for the relationship or he has to admit it's not a relationship. I'm just getting me some on the side. And he doesn't want anyone to know either of those things about him.
Because Pride being like this, it just doesn't remind me of the Pride we first met. It reminds me more of Lex's behavior or, even Celine's.
I don't know though, because I think Lex has always been open when, he was not ashamed of Tai-San. He kind of wanted to come out into the open with her, didn't he? Back in season 1.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I'm not sure. I mean, I think we can paint Lex as a sort of hit it, quit it guy, but actually, that's not really the case. But that's a really interesting perspective that both of you have put forward. I never thought, Liz, that he was sort of not embarrassed by May, but embarrassed because he was seeking comfort from someone. And now I see it. I can completely see it that way as well.
It's like Amber's out of the picture, and he doesn't know if she's coming back ever.
Mm.
Even if she would, she probably wouldn't be his, you know? It's just sad.
It is. And I mean, you feel sorry for May because
Yeah.
she values herself so little, I would say. She's got such low self-esteem. I mean, he is just a walking red flag. He is not committing to her. He's kind of playing down their interactions to such an extent. Like, he could not do more to tell her that she is just someone he's going to text to hook up with if he was trying. And yet, it's just, I understand. Like, it's a piece of writing that's quite good from May's perspective because we know that that's kind of who she is. So the fact that she's ignoring these red flags makes sense in terms of her character.
Mm-hmm.
It also makes sense that if she was going to take a chance on a guy who might be a red flag, Pride isn't the worst one. Like, she's clearly been with many red flags out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I can understand her being willing to give this guy a chance. Like, he's making it pretty obvious he's not into me and that this was just for comfort. We've both literally admitted to wanting someone who doesn't want us back. But I get her being like, but maybe there's a chance. Like, he's not the worst guy to take that chance on, to gamble with. She doesn't meet a lot of nice guys, or at least decent guys, in her neck of the woods. And so I at least get that, why she would be willing to throw caution to the wind. Like, this could be a bruising, but maybe it might grow into something. Maybe he'll see that I'm worth it,
You know what? I guess I banished this part of Pride's story from my memory because I guess I actively didn't want to remember this. But later on, I always had an issue with who we see Pride with and how he was too good for that person. But right now, I think he and Celine deserve each other. And I can't believe I'm saying that.
I just don't like what Pride's doing to May. I mean, he's not being fully like honest with her. Like, it's always May who's saying, "Oh, I know you're still looking for Amber. I can help you find Amber." He's always kind of holding that back, but he's happy to kiss her and bring her into bed. He's not fully like, okay, you know what my feelings for Amber. You know what I mean? He's not being upfront enough for me. I just don't like the way he's treating her, to be honest. But I get everything you guys are saying about his perspective. Just needing some comfort, but he's just not being honest enough for me.
No, I agree with you. I'm not making any excuses for how he's treating her, or anything like that. Because it's not cool what he's doing. He knows how this feels to not have those affections returned. He knows what it's like to have someone lie to you about those affections, and is willing to do that to somebody that he is aware is deeply into him. And the best thing he could do if he can't return those feelings is just let her down and don't fall into this. But he's taking advantage of the fact that she likes him so much for that personal selfish comfort. It's not cool, and I do feel bad for May, even though I can't say this is different. May isn't going this to 100% blind. Like, even if Pride's not coming out straight and saying, you remember it's Amber I want, right? That's obviously what she believes. She believes that he wants Amber, and he has done nothing to dissuade her from believing that. So she's not going this to 100% blind, but I get why she's willing to take the chance. And I still feel bad for her, but it's messy. And
I think it probably speaks to how she feels about herself, and we know how May feels about herself, and we know. And so that would make sense. Like you say, she knows that he is in love with somebody else, and yet she's still prepared to put herself in this position, which will only lead to her being hurt. She's going to be the one that comes out of this hurt.
I mean, she won't be above doing her own emotional manipulation come here, because she will start to play a card as if, I thought it was me. Like, I didn't know, you know what I mean? She's going to play her own games, but yeah, it's like, oh, you guys should not have started this, either of you.
Okay, meanwhile, Tai-San and Luke discuss the upcoming elections, with Tai-San skeptical of the value of leaders.
What's wrong with leadership?
You only have to look at The Guardian to find the answer to that.
Are you saying that's what power does to people? He was crazy from the start. We know that now. He's a damaged human being.
We're all damaged, Luke. I'll say one thing for this election, though. It's brought a sense of purpose. It's been a long time since we worked together as a tribe.
Yes, yeah. Generally, what are your thoughts on Tai-San's views about leadership here?
I think this is very in keeping with what we've always known about Tai-San. She believes in the individual taking responsibility for themselves, and this is in line with everything we know about her.
Mm-hmm.
It's not eye-opening or anything. It's almost like they just needed Luke to have a conversation. They needed Tai-San to have something to do. You know what I mean? Like, it felt more like filler dialogue.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, picking up needing Tai-San to have something to do. Again, I mean, she hasn't done much in this last section of season 3. So, yeah, I mean, and she's been kind of either tending to the Guardian or making the Guardian's meals for what feels like forever. And if she hasn't been doing that, then she's just been arguing with Lex about the Guardian and the Guardian's meals.
She's just being a good little housewife to the Guardian.
It was just nice to have a conversation that wasn't, I mean, I know that they were talking about the Guardian, but then they segued away from that and started talking about a bigger issue around leadership and personal responsibility and things like that. And it just felt like oh, thank goodness, a relief.
Yeah,
it felt like such a tease though, because I wanted more of it. It was very cut short. I was like, oh, can we get more from you? Like obviously you've had like for three seasons of reflection now, and obviously you've seen that kind of good that can come from leadership, but like balance it with your own views. Let me hear more of it. I wanted more. It wasn't enough.
Yeah, and it's also would be quite interesting to see Tai-San and Luke have more conversations, because the majority of the ones that we saw were when they were both when she was with the Guardian and he was in the Chosen. Now they're both outside of that. You got this tantalizing moment where it would be interesting to see more of their interactions. And also, how does Tai-San actually feel about Lex in his sheriff role as well? I would like to have dug a little bit deeper into that. But I guess the thing with Tai-San is her point of view is, do what you want as long as it's not hurting anybody. If it's hurting someone, you should stop. But other than that, if it's giving you personal fulfillment, then do it, you know? And I imagine that's the way she views Lex running around in his cowboy outfit. It's giving him personal fulfillment, you know?
It gives him purpose. It gives him something to do. If he's doing something useful, he's not doing something bad.
Yeah, and he's so desperate to prove himself in a sort of pseudo-leadership capacity, isn't he? Even though he magically forgot that when Bray was away, he could have taken over leadership of the Morats, because I don't think they ever took that away. But he forgot that.
Thought they'd have a deep conversation with character work. There's a plot to be had here. I think you need to readjust these expectations. We're lucky we got a sentence at all out of her that even has a hint of meaning. You guys are suggesting you haven't been broken yet. I
had hope. I was like, there's only so many flyers you can put up. Like, can we get a little scene of them actually talking and discussing it?
Did you not know that Tai-San's whole day revolves around cooking a meal for the Guardian, feeding the Guardian?
It's her husband.
And then discussing that this is what she does with her time. She doesn't even meditate anymore. There's no time, you guys.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's just cooking and cleaning and tending to him.
That's it. I haven't seen her light a candle in ages. Like, come on. Like, guys.
That's what happens after such a ceremony.
She's married, okay? She's got 2 husbands to cater to. Her hands are full, okay?
This is what marriage does to you. Oh, that's sad, yeah.
Yeah, it's really depressing.
Some people go for a child, she just goes for a second husband.
And yeah, because we are on the topic of Luke.
Ellie, is something the matter?
No, nothing's the matter. I just, dumped my boyfriend and threw my life away for nothing, that's all.
What do you mean?
Well, I heard you sucking up to her. So you were gonna end your life until she came along and saved you? Is that how it was?
Allie, I didn't...
Save it! I hope you'll be very happy together.
Yeah, any thoughts on that?
I understood the way she felt. Because there's something kind of creepy the way he's so, like, the way he, I don't want to say sucking up, but maybe that is the best word, the way he's sucking up to Ebony.
Yeah.
Especially when you take into account that Luke has a desperate desire to be seen well by people in an elevated position like Ebony.
Yeah.
The history he has with Ebony, he was one of her locos. He, at one point in time, followed her, and he was incredibly thankful that she saved his life. I would be upset, too, if I were Ellie, in a way, he's devalued everything she's brought to the table as his girlfriend, everything she's done to be his partner. And I'm not saying he's saying this, but I can understand why Ellie would watch this, his sycophantic behavior with Ebony, and feel like, oh, so you value what she's bringing to your life, but nothing I've done has helped you, has saved you, has been worth this sort of gushing praise. You haven't given me anything but pushback. And yet Ebony's the one who saved you. Are you serious? She's the one who gave you a purpose. And I can understand her being upset about that. Okay, go be with her then,
Yeah.
Yeah, because Luke he's attracted to the power part of Power and Chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And like you say, Liz, it's another powerful person in power, powerful connection to Ebony that they've had, that he was in the tribe previously, and we're not quite sure what their relationship was like. Although I can imagine that she couldn't have told you what any of the locals' names were. Just like left one, right one, But yeah, and it seems to have been that he shifted his dynamic from the Guardian. And then when Ellie had something, I think she had a bit of power when the mole rats, after they sort of got rid of the Chosen, then the mole rats were on top. And now it looks like Ebony's going to be the next one. And his allegiances shift constantly. And I don't think he's aware of it. I think he's just, like you say, such a sycophant that he does it without noticing that he's doing it.
It's like, yeah, let her have to explain to all of her loved ones that she's dating you. Let her be the one who has to do that. Let her put up with your depressive moods and your suicidal ideation. Let her pull you out of slumps and constantly reassure you that you're worth being alive and blah, blah, blah. Let her do all that heavy emotional lifting if she's so great. Because he has devalued everything Ellie is interested in. He's devalued her paper. He's devalued her interests. And it's not like Ellie wasn't trying to give him something he could do, give him a purpose, and it wasn't worth anything to him. He looked down his nose at her paper, her interest in journalism. So yeah, I like, it made sense that she was just like, oh, really? Because I know on the surface, if you're not paying attention, it just sounds like she's being jealous. But it's like, no. It's not jealousy that, oh, he likes Ebony, not me. It's that resentment of like, okay, I am giving you everything, and I have to watch you heap praise on another person, sucking up to another powerful person. Like, why did I bother?
Yeah, and she's given up a lot for him.
And she's taken a lot of flack. She is the one. I know he can't go outside the mall, but she's put a target on her back for him when she spoke up for him in the trial. She is the one that had all of the mole rats kind of thinking bad things about her. She has done all this, but she did this from a place of love because she loved him. She wasn't expecting anything, she wasn't expecting him to go down on his knees and say thank you, but an acknowledgement would not be too much.
Just be in the partnership with me. That's all she wanted.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
be in this partnership with me. And he hasn't been willing to do that, and
no.
So yeah, I was just like, that makes sense that she's like, oh, really? This is who you're so grateful to for, saving your life. Okay, go be with her then,
It just underscores how toxic the Luke and Ellie relationship has been the entire time. This is not a love story.
Was saying from the very start. That's why I don't know why, when it came to the Jack part, they tried to act like it was some traditional love story. And I was like, that's not how you set this up. and now that Jack's out of the way, it's right back to their dynamic being off. And it's just like, so you forgot the point of the story because you had Jack involved and you wanted to turn into a traditional 3-way triangle and anything for the drama, I guess.
Seeing this, I'm not sure how anyone can continue to sort of defend the narrative about around Ellie that a lot of the fandom have got. I just don't understand where it comes from. And I don't understand why Luke continually gets scot-free all the time when he is the worst person in that triangle. I mean, it's not a triangle, like you say.
Mm-hmm.
But he just gets scot-free all the time. And it's all put on Ellie.
Are you're surprised by that even today? Have you
No, I'm not
listened
surprised.
to some of the fandom discourse on the Jay, Ebony, or Jay and Amber and Trudy? You'll notice Jay gets off completely scot-free. It's all about the girls and how they've treated each other, and nobody ever says, did you see the way Jay mowed down through all of these girls for 2 seasons?
One after the other, yeah. No one ever has a go at Jay. It's crazy. Literally crazy.
We'll get to that.
Well, that's because it's misogyny, isn't it? It's misogyny.
Because he's got a pretty face, and come on.
Pretty face. That's all it takes.
To forget all his crimes. Like, come on.
Everyone's just like, oh, what Amber did to Trudy. Like, what about Jay? What Jay did to Trudy? What Jay did to Ebony? What he is inevitably going to do to Amber? Like, come on.
Yeah, it's not like Jay didn't know that Trudy and Amber were friends as well. I mean, that's the other thing. If you weren't 100% into Trudy, then why go there knowing the fallout is going to be incredible? It's going to be nuclear.
Mm-hmm.
The booty was fine, man.
I mean, you can't blame him, but still.
He wanted to outdo Bray, and he did.
No, at the end of the day, it's because Amber made him wait. It was all about that ego. She made him wait. He was going to make her pay for that.
Damn.
He just wanted, he wanted to be a Bray replacement in all aspects. I'm surprised he didn't hook up with Celine for a night.
Well, there was time. He probably would have reached the 6th season.
I mean, have you seen the way his dead ex-girlfriend looks?
Oh.
She's like a spitting image of Danny.
It's just good old-fashioned misogyny, though, from the fandom. But I would also say from the writers as well, because they're sort of positioning the fandom in a certain direction.
Mm.
And the writing in the tribe is always down on the women. It's always, and not the I would say the first season, although I think there was a little bit in the first season. But I think from then on, it definitely, the female characters are the ones that are blamed and punished. And the male characters kind of, oh wow, he's just a Jack the lad, isn't he? Boys will be boys.
He has needs.
Yeah, he has needs, and he needs to fulfill them. I mean, it's as if women don't have needs.
Okay, let's still stick with Luke, because there's a scene between him and Lex.
1 M a day? For what, Lex? For a bunch of thugs to hang out on the streets playing macho? And don't get above yourself. If I had my way, you'd be buzzard food right now. Along with that fruitcake boss of yours. You might be let out of your cell, but as far as I'm concerned, you're still on probation.
So yeah, well, what's your thoughts about this scene between Lex and Luke and the general exploitation of the money system?
It was just Lex showing that he has more power than Luke.
Can I ask a question about the money? Because to me, isn't it going exactly the way as the trading tokens went?
Mm-hmm.
And we all know how well that went.
Yeah, that's why Lex is in charge of the amount of money.
I like it for the power struggle. I guess I like the actors, the way they perform it. This is the one bit of power that Luke has been granted, and this is something he is good at. And being able to tell someone, no, I can't give you any, question someone. What are your motives? What are your intentions? Why are you giving out so much money? I need to keep track of every, M that's going out there. And Lex being able to remind him, oh, you thought Ebony giving you this job gave you any sort of authority. Here, let me remind you that you actually have none. If I wanted to, I could just take the bag. I am asking for the M's out of common courtesy because I'm not trying to start anything with anybody. And I just liked that little power play between them. And, I like it because it's another hint that Luke is missing having some power. And I'm not saying that's like a bad thing. We all want some sort of power, some kind of control in our lives. But I do like how much it bothers him. Because at the end of the day, it's like the whole point of the money was so that Lex could pay deputies. They could pay people to work with him. So unless you actually come up with some paperwork for fixed wages, you can't be that upset that he already promised to pay anybody who works for him 1M every day that they work. He does need to fulfill that. So why are you so shocked when he came and said, I got people to work for me, give me the M's? Unless you actually write out how much people can be paid for how much work, then don't be surprised that the idea you had about money is working.
Thank you. I didn't understand the argument.
Can I also say, I know that this isn't mentioned in the actual discussion, but I just wanted to say how apt I thought it was that Lex would get a female crew around him. I just love that for him. It feels, even though we know he's a massive misogynist, but it does feel like right for him, and I don't know why.
It's because it feels right because of how good Lex and Alice were together.
Yeah.
Or how good they seem together as a team.
Lex has always had what do you call it? A fetish for assertive women.
Yes, that's true.
I mean, he ended up with Zandra because she was easy, but it was Tai-San he wanted. He wanted the girl who was willing to take him out in a fight and threaten him. And who knows what else she was doing to him in that bedroom. That's who he wanted. He was with Zandra because she was easy. Hey, he even tried to play for Amber, the very girl he was throwing tantrums over being in charge. He still tried to make a play for her. He was scared to death of Alice, but he respected her like nobody else's business. Lex likes assertive women.
Yeah.
They're a pain in the butt, but he likes them. They get him going.
Okay, following on from this, Andy tries to use his coins to buy a guitar.
They never listen to anything I say. Welcome to the club. They're always playing tricks on me. Like this stupid money.
Where'd you get that from?
Lex gave it to me. Said I could buy stuff with it. So I tried, but it didn't work.
The trader didn't take it? Who was it? Show me.
After Casey puts out some spin, he does manage to trade it for a necklace, which he takes from Andy as payment for his services, before giving it to May as a love token. Just continuing on the theme of what's your thoughts on this currency being used and Casey being shot down by May?
It was nice to see a familiar face amongst the traders because that made so much sense, and the instant reluctance to accept those M's because like other people said before, what can we do with those? You can't eat M's. So I get the reluctance. As for him showing Andy how it's done and then taking them away from him, I'm not surprised because it's exactly what Lex would have done to Casey in a similar
Yes, it is.
in a similar way. Lex would have done that to him, so in Casey's mind that's how this works. As for him with May, I just felt so bad for the kid, and May tried to do it gently. I'll give her that. It's she tried to let him down gently. She didn't straight up start laughing loudly, full in his face, She
was straightforward and kind with him.
Yeah.
And did what you're supposed to. When you don't return those affections and you can see someone's deeply into you, don't take their gifts. Don't take their tokens of affection. You know what I mean? And even the way that she does it, like, I can't take this. If I took this, I'd be giving you the idea that we could and we can't. You know what I mean? That's not going to happen. I think you're great, but I'm sorry. And you can tell she doesn't want to hurt his feelings, but she knows she's got to nip it in the bud. Rip the Band-Aid off fast. That sucked, but yeah, Casey, she let you down as gently as she could have. You'll thank her for it someday. Which I just thought was interesting, that of all of her lack of principles, playing with someone's heart is one thing that May doesn't do. She don't play that game.
I thought it was a really nice piece of writing where we saw Casey so confident when he was dealing with, I'm going to call him Fisheye and Andy. And that was the situation that he felt very at home in. He knew what he was doing. And then we get to the confession with May, where he essentially tells her that he likes her. And the acting is so different. The writing is so different. He feels so vulnerable. In many ways, he's in the same position that Andy was in when he found him in that burned out car. And I just thought it was such a nice juxtaposition of where he was when he felt confident and where he was when he was stepping outside of his comfort zone.
My real complaint about the series of scenes, is the lack of recognition between Fisheye and Casey. Like, what's the point of bringing back a familiar face if these two are going to act like they don't know each other, and Fisheye is going to act as though he's never been scammed by Casey before? Casey literally says the same thing to him about the M's being collector's items as he did about all the Zoot gear he sold to this kid.
Yep.
You know, I just thought that would have been a fun conversation for him to be like, hey, Fisheye, and he'd be like, Casey, don't even. And then Casey's still able to convince him. That would have been cool. It would have emphasized Casey's skills, and but otherwise there's no point in bringing a familiar face back if you don't acknowledge it's a familiar face.
Could have been anyone.
Yeah.
It's odd because I do remember like this series of scenes. It does have a payoff later on, but it's like, well, why was the intro played like he doesn't know him? It's very odd. I don't understand it myself. It's like he's talking to a stranger, but like, Casey, you've had a history and you've been training with each other for ages. Like, what's going on?
Like, seeing KC show up with the M's should give Fisheye even less incentive to trade for it. Like, oh no, you've done this to me before, okay? And then Casey has to like talk his way out of that. Like, nah, I know, or whatever. But to have them act as though they've never even met before, and Casey's just dealing with some random trader to show, Andy how the job is done. I mean, it would have been kind of cool if Fisheye and Casey were in on it, but that's clearly not what was going on. So it's more like the writers just forgot that these two have a history.
Yeah.
Yep, those pesky notes.
Going back to the scene, though, especially between Casey and May, I think it's a nice juxtaposition between what was happening with May and Pride earlier. And I think, like you said, Liz, it gives you insight. She knows how you should treat someone when you're not into them. You don't want to give them any false hope, and you don't want to put them in a position where they feel like there's hope. They're going to, if they try hard enough, they might get something out of this. And it's just interesting when you put those two scenes together that she has so much self-awareness in one and then a lack of self-awareness in the other. But I guess it just comes down to the fact that she fancies Pride.
Yeah, there's a hot guy. All brains are off.
Yeah, and I mean, we've all been blinded by that.
She can't control how Pride treats her, but she can control how she's choosing to treat someone else. And I think it's insight. It's like insight into what she's hoping Pride doesn't do to her.
Yeah.
Like, she's hoping his actions are sincere, that he actually does like her in some way, even if he's hung up on Amber, that he's not, that there must be something he feels for her, else he wouldn't have acted on it. Like, I feel like it's a hint at that, because she would not act on feelings she didn't have. In this moment, that's exactly what she makes sure to do. I cannot act on that, not even take, because she would be doing what Pride is doing to her. She'd be taking advantage of the fact that Casey likes her to get a nice necklace, and she likes it. She thinks it's very pretty, but immediately, like, I can't take it because you're giving it to me with the expectation that, I might return your affections, and so I like that tiny bit of insight into May.
Yeah, the moment feelings are involved, May is an honest person.
I mean, from the jump, she was telling Celine, just tell the father of your child you're pregnant.
Yeah.
You say all these great things about him. I mean, unless you're afraid he'd hurt you or abandon you, why aren't you just telling him the truth? I don't see why you're lying to him.
Yeah, and something that's been picked up in the past is even when May is duplicitous, she's duplicitous to your face. She does tell you roughly that this is how she is. This is who she is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in many ways, I know we've mentioned this before, but she's much more aligned, I would say, to Casey, who is also kind of an honest liar. I mean, when they're duplicitous, they do it to your face. They don't necessarily always do it behind your back. And even if they do it behind your back, they own up to it. And
They do. They own up to it.
Yeah, they've both got a lot of self-awareness. They're both very interesting characters.
It's the type to be like, of course I scammed you, but you knew I was gonna.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't you proud of how well I scammed you?
What else did you expect?
Like, you left yourself wide open.
Let's be honest, Lex is Casey's dad. So what are we expecting?
Made to be his sister?
I don't know about that.
Okay, honestly, what did Lex teach Casey that kid didn't already know and could do better?
Well, yeah. But I think
he didn't need a teacher. He just needed, like, somebody who cared about him.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what Lex kind of gave him in a rough way, didn't he? I mean, he hasn't been consistent, but he's been roughly around in that way.
He gave it to him for all of one season. That's
well, there
what
you
he
go.
did.
I mean, that's consistent for the tribe, isn't it? Let's be real. That's good parenting.
Okay, well, I'll tell you something. Off the record. I'd try and encourage kids from different tribes to get along better. If we all start pulling together, it'll make things so much easier.
So you're saying we should forget the independent tribe system and all go under the same flag?
No, what I'm saying is, I've seen a lot of wasted talent out there. Talent that us Mozzies could benefit from.
So yeah, Hannah, what do you make of Ellie's commitment to her job and the encounter with Moz?
Well, again, this feels very in character with Ellie. She has always put journalism and the truth above everything else. We saw that in season 2. So again, this is very consistent for her. I mean, weirdly, we've had some consistent character beats in this episode, apart from Pride. But there has been, like, we've had consistency with Tai-San, we've had consistency with Ellie. It makes sense. This is who she is. She, when it comes to the truth, she will not be muzzled. She will tell the truth and she will tell her own perspective, and she believes entirely in freedom of the press.
Yeah, I really like seeing this continuity for Ellie. I like seeing her get her groove back because she was a little directionless for a bit. And, you know, the Chosen came in and just swept all her dreams away. And she was at a loss, even when the Chosen were gone, as to what to do with herself. And so seeing this passion drive from her is really nice. And that she's actually being more responsible with it than she was the first time around. And genuinely interested in the truth, not just headlines. I like that bit of maturity coming out of her. And even if it's never said, you get the idea that she understands even more the danger of propaganda, because even a great headline can be propaganda, you know? So she seems to have a better understanding of the definition of that word and really does want to live up to having journalistic integrity this time, you know? She's not as obsessed with just getting the story, having the story, but she actually wants to use this as a way so that people have a voice and wanting to hear the people's voice. And even if that means throwing herself into danger, it's just a little bit more admirable this time around. But she is practically a year older, you know, so I'm like, that was a nice touch for her. And I loved her conversation with Maz. I like that Maz lets her guard down a little bit and shows some vulnerability off the record, you know, of what she actually wants. You know, she doesn't want to have to struggle like this. And it's just a great conversation between the two of them that I enjoyed. And I also really liked the fact that even though Lex gave Luke a hard time when Luke was like, I'm worried about Ellie, she hasn't come back, she went out there alone, will you please go? And Lex was like, oh, me and the people you were making fun of and said shouldn't be paid, you want me to take them to go look for her? I love that because Lex still went looking for Ellie. He gave Luke a hard time, but he took it seriously that one of his tribe mates had left alone and hasn't returned and went looking for her. Like, bless your heart, Lex. Like, you are actually putting the effort into this job rather than just chasing the glory of this job. You know, he went looking for Ellie. And I thought that was a great payoff to him showing up and going, what's up? I heard your voice in here. That's just doing my patrols. And we know it's off hours. He literally just told Luke that I'll have to be paid overtime to do that. And he chose of his own volition to go out by himself to find his tribe mate. And I was like, "Aw, that was sweet."
He really was. I do have to say, though, I really liked the fact that Maz recognized the good things Ellie has and how strong she can be.
Yeah.
And how well she would have fitted amongst the mosquitoes in certain ways.
Well, she basically offered her a chance to come and join them, didn't she?
Yeah.
But it was definitely two people seeing their power, recognizing the power in each other.
Yeah.
And it's not, and I think it adds an extra thing to Moz, because Ellie doesn't have obvious power. You know, she's not good in a fight. She's proven how awful she is in a fight. We've spoken about this. But yet Moz could see that there was something in her that was worth. Like Moz talks about that there's a lot of talent on the street, and you know, on one level you could have just said, "Oh well, she just wants muscle," but her
but that's not it.
No, exactly. The way she was with Ellie showed that there's more to Moz than meets the eye.
What I think is funny is that she misses the point here that she would hate Ellie being a Maz, because Maz doesn't really like free thinkers within her own tribe. Like, the very thing that Ellie is doing is the sort of thing that Maz would have been pissed off about if one of her Mazis did this. Her Mazis are hungry. They went out and got themselves a job where they could be paid. And Maz sees that as an act of betrayal. She even claims that Ellie being willing to print her true thoughts is a betrayal to her tribe. Why would you want someone like this here when you clearly only want yes women running around you, Maz? You don't actually want Ellie. Like, what are you going to do? You just want her to be your mouthpiece? Because I just thought it was contradictory that she is admiring Ellie's gumption, free thinking, and willing to do whatever she thinks is right for her version of integrity, but she doesn't value that within her own Mozzies.
One of the things I did like about this, though, it's like there's two people who realize that Ellie could be of use, or, you know, could be a good addition to things. And it's Ebony, when she gave Ellie back her newspaper.
Yeah.
And Moz. Whereas none of the other people seem to realize the value of Ellie.
I also just wanted to say how much I always like it in the tribe when they write in scenes. Say, for instance, we had Lex and Ellie in this one, where you have a mole rat who will turn up, and it's one that you maybe, I mean, I know we were kind of primed for Lex to turn up, but we've never really seen much between Lex and Ellie, and what there has been, it's clear that she finds him a misogynist pig and he finds her irritating shrew. But it was just, you kind of felt that they were in a tribe, that they did feel, that he felt, like you say, Liz, a connection to her. And I always really enjoy it when they do that on the show, when they'll have a character that you don't expect to turn up, protecting a character that maybe they don't have a lot to do with. And I always love those things. They're always my favourite.
It's a really nice contrast to what Lex didn't understand that in season 2. He wanted the glory of being in a position of power, but didn't want the responsibility that comes with it. He always wanted to be chief of security. But the problem was that Lex didn't care about the safety of people he wasn't personally invested in. And that was something Ebony did well. She didn't like these people, but she understood her job was to give a crap about them, at least their physical well-being, you know, even if she didn't care about them personally. So it is nice to see that Lex has reached that place. This is my job. He's taking it seriously. He's putting the hours in. He's putting the effort in. And if Ellie is out there by herself and she hasn't returned home, it's my job to make sure she is okay. Someone brought that concern to me, and he actually took it seriously. And I'm just like, oh, that's just a nice growth for you, you know, to see you've come this far.
Oh, it's saying something, though. It just made me realize we've reached a point where people have to go to Lex to tell him that, you know, Ellie might be getting herself in trouble. And no one bothers to tell Alice because she's off in La La Land.
Yeah, that is interesting that Luke didn't even bother to mention it to Ned and Alice, who were out on the street, you know, putting up posters.
I mean, how difficult would it have been been to just tell him, look, Ellie is out there for the newspaper and she wants to do this or this. Could you keep an eye on her if you see her?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and to have to go begging to Lex as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably that the writers just didn't think of it, but you could also read it in that, like, there would be no point.
I mean, Alice ain't a fan of Luke, sure, but if he would come to her with concern about her sister.
Yeah.
So yeah, just the fact that he doesn't.
Yeah.
Really messed up. Like, when you guys brought that up, I was just, like, giving Lex his flowers for having grown up and is now taking a job seriously. And yet here I am, now I'm forced to think, wow, Lex took your sister's safety more seriously than you did.
Mm.
When Lex had he could have just easily been like, dude, she's a big girl. It's not even dark yet. You know what I mean? I've known her to go off for days on a quest to find answers. You know, she's just asking people around the city questions. He wouldn't be a bad person for not assuming she needs to be checked up on. And yet he still showed more concern for her than Alice has all season.
Just a heavy sigh there.
Yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh.
I just felt like I had to point it out.
Yeah, but it's good that you did, Sabine, because this is where it's eventually ended up with Alice, hasn't it? This is all the bad work that they put in destroying her character, and this is where it's ended up. You know, that even like I don't even think that it was a purposeful thing. I think the writers just didn't even think of it that to even give her this to do, because she is now, like we talked about Tai-San being reduced down to just the Guardian. She's kind of just reduced down to like trailing around after Ned, or Ned having her trail around
to
after
Mrs. Ned.
Yeah, it's so cringe. It's awful.
Mm.
And I'm not even sure what the message meant to be, since we know who Ned is. We know who Ned is. And same thing with, like, we know that Tai-San's being taken for a ride with the Guardian. And it's just like, what is the message in this? We just meant to laugh at these two girls for being such idiots.
All right. That brings us to our final thoughts of the episode.
You look like you could use a break. Why don't I feed him? It's okay. No Tai-San, really. It's my turn. You shouldn't have to do this all by yourself. I know how much it upsets you. Well, if you're sure.
And uses this opportunity to tell him about Ned's plan to give him over to Moz, suggesting a chance to surprise him and escape. So yeah, Scheming Ebony, she's back. What did you make of this?
I've missed her. I've missed her so much. It was so good to have her back.
Finally.
And that final shot with her and the Guardian, and they're just on the same wavelength, and it's like, yeah, you two are good at this. You're good at this. This is where your skill sets lie. Do more of this. And also, has Ned never heard of Ebony before? Like, he thinks he can trust her. Why does he think he can trust her?
This is what I've asked before.
It still makes me wonder if Ned was even living in this city before the Chosen took over.
I don't think he could have been.
No.
I think it would have been nice to have established where they actually came from. Ed, who the hell is Ed? Ned, Andy, and Tally. It would have been nice to know where they'd come from, because then you could have sort of made sense as to why he doesn't know who any of the main players in this are.
Yeah.
But as it is, it just feels like you would know who this is, especially since he was a trader in slaves, and we know that they bought slaves. They were one of the tribes that bought slaves. They weren't one of the tribes that traded slaves. So he would have heard of them.
Well, me and Maggie's new headcanon is that he actually never was a slave trader.
Really?
Pride was his first try at it.
Yeah.
That's why he was so bad at it.
That makes sense. I mean, he seems like the sort of person that just bumble from one thing to another, doesn't he? So, yeah, that tracks. That's canon now.
It's the only way to explain how bad he was at it.
But he only starts to get the shivers now, after everything that he has kind of seen Ebony do, after the fact that he took that she has been complicit in the entire thing, and she's been given two faces to everybody, and he knows that. Only now does he start to get a little bit worried. The minute she started to say, "You'll get your just desserts," I'd be like, I need to pack and leave. I need to change my name. From now on, I go by Manuel. But no, oh God.
So yeah, it says a lot about Ned's lack of thought when it comes to basically anything. It's as if he literally just exists from moment to moment, and that's just bad writing right there. But the fact that he managed to glean enough information that his girlfriend obviously took up with Ebony at one point in time, but in all this time has never bothered to inquire about Ebony's character. Who she is, what she's done. I mean, you'd think that's the first thing you would do if this person caught you writing the ransom note, meaning they discovered that you kidnapped the girls, and yet instead of turning you in, decided to start blackmailing you. And you have no idea what her goal is. Like, he has done no inquiring, no questioning. It never crossed his mind, what is Ebony getting out of this deal?
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah, I get it. He's focused on what he could get out of the deal. But have you ever wondered why she didn't turn you in? What do you think she is trying to get out of this? Especially since the only thing she's had you do is make sure the girls stay fed. She hasn't made any moves as far as you can tell. All she's done is keep the secret. You haven't written any more notes. You haven't, kept posing as the kidnapper, communicating with these people. Have you never occurred to you that there's something she wants and you have no idea what it is? Why is it only now that it hits you? What can you tell me about Ebony? And he only asks that because Alice brings it up. You know what I mean? I don't think they've ever written Ned to have thoughts of his own in his own head. He literally only exists in the moment that he's on the page.
They allow Ned less amount of thoughts than they allowed Ryan.
Yeah. Well, Ned is just a plot device, isn't he?
Right. He's not a character. And it's just bizarre to me. I'm having a lot of trouble, as Ned's story is coming full circle and we can see him as a whole package, not just from our nostalgic point of view from watching the show so many years ago, but like watching it now and realizing like, yeah, he is not a character. They never intended for him to be. And I'm just wondering who thought he was a good idea to get us where we need to get. Like, there were so many ways to get here. And the better forms of Ned they could have had and still got us here. And that blew my mind that he didn't have any questions until literally now. And I don't think they do enough work in showing us his inner thoughts. Any inner turmoil or conflict over this, because as soon as Alice says, "Oh, she'll stab you in the back first chance he gets," that's what drives him to say the deal is off. Yeah, that sounds like a big deal. That he's just decided I can't trust her. I'm just going to go tell Bray where the girls are. How is that going to play out?
I was going to say.
The only way he could have played that off was by claiming to Bray that he followed Ebony, and even then she would have found a way to get out of that.
I mean, another potential thing he could have done is moved them from the location. I mean, it would have been risky, but moving them to another location that Ebony doesn't know about. I mean, what's she going to say? If he cleans up the room they were in, she's just going to take Bray to an empty room and say, Trudy and Anne were being held here, and it was by Ned. And Ned just has to say, I don't know what you're talking about. They're not in the room, are they?
To be a big deal that he's fed up with Ebony and he's ready to end the deal and just go tell Bray. Which I actually do like Ned reaching a point where he's like, I never wanted it to play like this anyway. I just wanted to trade the girls for the Guardian. Again, we were never given a reason why, blah, blah, blah. But the fact that he's fed up with these games to the point where he's like, you know what, I don't think I can trust you. You're not giving me what I want. I'm just going to end this. But because they, again, didn't let Ned be a real person with thoughts and feelings that felt genuine and consistent, all I keep thinking is, you're just going to go... I can't give him any credit for blaming Ebony for this. I have no idea how this conversation with Bray is supposed to go. Or if Ned has given it any thought on how he's going to present to Bray, oh, by the way, I know where the girls are, and this is why. How do you think it's going to play with Alice? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I can't imagine it because they didn't give him any real thoughts to explain to me how Ned would go about this so I could give him any credit for it. You know, it'd be cool if I knew what Ned was thinking. If I knew that Ned was thinking, I'm going to throw Ebony under the bus and this is how I'm going to do it or whatever. Also, his sudden I'm not doing this with you anymore doesn't hold any weight because, again, Ned hasn't been given any thoughts or feelings of genuine, I don't want to do this anymore. And this is why I don't want to do it anymore. The only thing we've been shown is that he's impatient for a reward.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. None of this is admirable, you know? So I'm just kind of like, okay, this is all a waste on me. And it could have been really good. And then this is where it really compounds. That last scene with Ebony and The Guardian, absolutely fantastic, perfectly acted. Love the framing of the camera, the expressions on their faces, the dialogue. Perfect. Chef's kiss. This is my problem with it. This is the moment in a disaster movie, the last 20 minutes where you now have to give a damn whether the cast of characters you've been following survive. Okay? Every disaster movie has this. That last 20 minutes, the big plunge. This is when you're on pins and needles, like, oh my gosh, I've spent the whole movie getting to know these people and care about them and watch them survive one thing after another. They have got to survive this one last thing, and if they don't, I'm going to burst into tears, okay? That is all a disaster movie needs to give you, okay? And if this story had been done right, that is the feeling we would get when we realize what Ebony is going to do to Ned. And yet I don't feel that because they didn't build the story up properly. I'm supposed to be like, oh no, oh my gosh, no, Ned, you know, or...
If anything, you actually feel it the other way. You can't wait for Ned to get this comeuppance that's coming to him. That's what I'm looking forward to. And that's what I was looking forward to when I watched it originally.
Like, I watched it and I was thinking to myself, can you imagine if in this episode where we see Ned and Alice being so happy together, so in love, and Ned had been a fantastic boyfriend to her. Sure, he's still a jerk who kidnapped 2 young women and lied to this tribe and held them hostage and was trying to get the Guardian thrown to the wolves. He could still be all of those things, all of those shady things. But if he had just been a fantastic boyfriend to Alice, and we could believe he was genuinely in love with her, and my gosh, they could be so happy if he could just fix this choice he made. The direness you'd feel at this moment when you realize what Ebony's going to do to him. Because your gut, you'd be like, no, she's going to destroy the happiness that Ned and Alice have. Because you want him to get out of it. You want him to fix it somehow so they can be happy together. And instead, as you said, you're rooting for the Guardian.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't be.
Yeah, what a world. Why are we rooting for the Guardian?
Because the man is awesome. I mean, that look on his face alone.
But I also just wanted to say that going back to what both Sabine and Liz have said about Ned, none of that, and we've said this multiple times, but I would just want to say it one last time. Bevan is still consistently doing a good job. And that was something I completely missed the first time. And if there is any element of confliction, it's on his face, never out of his mouth. And he is, you know, I still feel sorry that we didn't give him a character that would have been more interesting, because I think he would have smashed it. Because the little bits that he actually gets to do in this are great. And he's got great chemistry with Alice. He's got good chemistry with the kids. You know, it would have just been really nice if they bothered to write him a character instead of just having a plot device walking around being creepy and gross.
100% agree with that. It's a waste of talent.
Yeah.
You got this very talented young man to play this role, and I'm like, of all the things, like, why did you cast Bevan? One, he looked too old to be playing a teenager, so there must have been a reason you cast him regardless. You know, because he was just so good for the role. But then you didn't write the role to require such a great, talented person. You didn't require it because you didn't do anything with this character. You didn't give the character any depth. Bevan is putting in a performance that's unworthy. The character is unworthy of his performance, you know? And what a waste. What a waste.
I should have just given Bevan a better character. This character just did not work at all.
I don't think any actor could have saved that character.
No. I can't think of anyone who could have.
No, that's There was no saving Ned.
Maybe Gary Oldman. Gary Oldman could have done it.
Yeah, but even saying that, I mean, the thing is, the writers had to want to write the character, and
That's
we
the
know
thing,
that the writers are biased against plus-size people. We know this.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that, they would have had to have gotten on board with actually writing those characters, like keeping Pride relatively consistent, but it just comes back to the fact that the writers put these characters in these positions, and then they're just like, well, he's fat, so he's also an idiot.
And they already did that with Ryan, but at least they made Ryan a nice and decent person.
Well, yeah, we know that, but according to what they put out on their tribe socials, you'd think Ryan had a learning disability or something.
I would have loved to see a Ned who was suave, very cool, persuasive, someone that it's like, wow, no wonder Alice has fallen in love with him, and yet a slimy snake on the side.
Yeah.
I think that would have made him 10 times more interesting and would have caused a lot of conflict to know that he could be a wonderful, sincere, genuine boyfriend in love with Alice. I want to make your dreams come true. I want to make your life better. And treated her as nothing but gold, and yet still capable of doing this on the side. The conflict you'd have, because you'd want Alice to have this happiness. Like, oh my gosh, he's so good to her though, and yet he did this.
And I think Bevan could have pulled
that off. I believe it 100%.
And it would have shown, like, Ned is a psychopath. That's the thing. He can compartmentalize these different things. He can compartmentalize his relationship with Alice and the kids, and then also do this terrible thing to Amber and Trudy.
So it would have added to the depth of Alice's heartbreak, because when Alice's heart is broken over this version of Ned, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to really be on board with her heartbreak, because he was horrible to her, and it's like, Alice, you deserve better. Like, you were willing to settle for that. But if he had been the perfect boyfriend to her, just great, where no one could deny he loves her. I mean, all his flaws, he loves that woman. There's nothing he wouldn't do for her. Her heartbreak would be all the worse. We would really feel it for her, We'd be like, why did they have to make the perfect guy for her also be a psychopath? You know what I mean? Like,
it's so sad. Well, ultimately, this is the end of their storyline, and we're gonna get. I'm just happy that he's gone, and I'm not gonna feel anything because of his relationship with Alice. Well, she's feeling that he's dead. Like, cause I didn't buy into it. I never felt it. So it's just a loss.
It's very hollow. It doesn't conclude in any sort of satisfying way. But then I'd argue that that's kind of the whole of this season. This season doesn't really conclude in a satisfying way. It just kind of ends with a cliffhanger. But most of the stories of each individual character or relationship is kind of left up in the air. But the best example of that is Alice and Ned. Like you said, Lance, this payoff that's going to come is going to feel so hollow. In fact, it's going to be embarrassing the way Alice is responding to it, because
it's even worse than that.
We know who Ned is, so her, crying at his graveside, we don't feel it from her position. We don't feel it from how she feels about this, because she didn't know any of this. She thought she knew who Ned was. That's been ripped away from her. She's struggling to believe he ever did any of that in the first place. And she can't come to terms with it. But like us, the viewer, we're like, girl, get over it. He was awful. Thank God he's gone. And it's just so hollow. And it's some of the worst, if not the worst, writing in the show.
And it's triply worse as well because of how Alice has been written this series as well. So like sympathy and like empathy for her is already at an all-time low anyway. So when you combine it with everything else, it's like, wow, guys, I feel nothing. I got nothing for you. Sorry.
It feels like they had a mission statement for this season, and it was destroy Alice at all costs, and also, if you can, throw Tai-San into the bargain. We'll also destroy her as well.
Alice's heartbreak for Ned doesn't work for me, is because of how he treated her. Like, I can accept that she didn't know him the way we did. That's fine. And I can still empathize with the character because based on their knowledge, but her knowledge of Ned was that he was an a-hole to her half of the time they knew each other. Like in this episode alone, he comes into their room chipper because Ebony has just told him, I got everything. I just need to move it across country. So he's in good spirits and he comes swooping into the room, basically dancing, and she's surprised. I don't know which number red flag that is, but if you're surprised that your partner is being nice to you, that's a problem. You know what I mean? Like, my problem with her heartbreak isn't that she didn't know he was a dickweed. She did know he was a dickweed. He was that way to her. It's like, that's my problem. Like, if he had been perfect to her, I could accept everything else he was doing on the side. I could get on board with this if you just made him an angel to Alice. Then I could buy her falling in love with him. I can't buy her being this broken up over a guy who's only nice to her 50% of the time.
Yeah, because you made a really interesting point ages and ages ago when I was on here, and you were talking about how emotionally abusive Ned is when he was being really, like, similar situation to this. He was like ignoring her, and when he was speaking to her, it was usually very negative things. And it was the boat date. She kind of had to run around and make sure that he was happy, look after his feelings. I mean, there's no way you can slice this unless he has a complete personality transplant, as Liz has suggested, that he comes off as anything other than just glad to see the back of him.
Everyone else just depressed.
Yeah, I am. I'm looking at these two amazing performers who were giving you everything you needed to make a love story work.
Yeah.
They had the talent, they had the chemistry, and you didn't use it to tell an actual love story. I mean, they can only do so much. Alice is selling a young woman enamored. She is selling the joy that this guy brings to her life. And Bevan is selling the sincerity when he can and giving all these subtle performances that aren't even in the script, but he is pulling it out of him. A rewrite, and theirs would have been a genuine tragic love story. And instead you make them both look like fools. I do think that says something. Jay is not incredibly well written either. And they try to sell us on him. Now, Ned, they're not trying to sell us on Ned, but they are trying to sell us on Ned and Alice. But I do think the image of being typically attractive to a young audience says a lot about how they're received. Ned is not received well by this young audience because he is not traditionally attractive, so you notice everything about him. You notice all the things that's going wrong with him as a character and as a love interest and everything because you're not enamored with him. Where Jay, they didn't have to put any effort into it because let's just face it, he is absolutely beautiful, and so it covers a lot of sins. They don't even have to try to write Jay as being decent in any way. They don't have to try to convince you that these young women would fall head over heels for the psychopath slave trader. You know what I mean? Like, they don't, he's a colonist for Pete's sake, and it doesn't matter because he's so beautiful, you know what I mean? And the writers don't have to put any effort into giving Jay depth. And when they try, it's the laziest depth ever. They just fridge some girl we never met, and that's his character development.
That is it, yeah.
So yeah, that's it. Like, I think it would have been very interesting if Jay had been played by a less conventionally attractive person.
Yeah. I mean, you can actually widen out, you can actually add Lex into the discourse around Ned and Jay, because in many ways, Ned is a lot like Lex. And we know that Lex can be quite gross. We know that he's got questionable hygiene sometimes. We know that he will just sleep on the floor. And yet, these are just things that we're like, oh, Lex, because of how Caleb looks. And how Caleb acts.
Yeah.
I've clocked that. I was like, they are the same person. They're the same person.
They're the same person. Yeah, they are.
The difference is Lex was given the opportunity to grow up.
Yes. Yeah.
And Ned is not given that opportunity. And also, Lex came sooner, he was written better, all that stuff. Like, got all that, but their characteristics are the same.
I would caveat that with, though, Lex has been given the opportunity to grow up now, but I think as we go along, he's going to turn more and more into Ned.
None of the characters get a chance to grow after this, except for Siva. I think she's the only character that gets to grow up.
The only one. No one else does at all.
I just feel so bad for Siva. She's great.
Like Siva, in 2 seasons that we get after this, there's one character who's allowed any genuine growth and change by the things that are happening around them, and it's Siva. Nobody else gets that.
Celine for some short moments. Not a lot, though.
I'd say a little bit of Ram as well.
No, his isn't sincere either. He gets 5 seconds to actually question his actions and the disaster it caused, and then goes right back to what he was doing with the glee of a psychotic preschooler. Okay? He does not grow. He was just sorry that, there's 2 more women I'll never bang again. That's all that was.
I think you should that's season 4. That's the podcast. That's the review.
To Ebony scheming, well, I welcome it. I'm so sorry. We went so far off topic.
No, I mean, that says everything. We're so done with season 3.
Yeah, we don't even want to talk about it anymore.
We're done. So far.
I want to rant about something new.
Yeah.
Well, just wait, because it's coming.
Oh, we'll have a lot. Yep. A lot of new ammo.
Funny. I think that's really funny about each season. Now, I think season 1 is one of the few where there's a diverse number of characters we rant about, because everyone feels differently about every character because they're written so well. They're all written to be the good and bad and just all over the map. And so it doesn't feel like you're spending every episode ranting about the same
gushing
person.
about Alice.
But for example, in season 2, we spent a lot of time ranting about Danny. Like, we can't help it. And then season 3, it's like, okay, we have the first half and we're going, like, there's some stuff going on. But by the second half of season 3, we are ranting about Ned in every single episode. And I'm like, I'm tired of ranting about Ned, but it's only going to start again when we get to season 4. We're going to be ranting about Jay every freaking episode. And I'm just like, yeah, like I'm ready to rant about another character until that gets old, I guess. Believe it or not, I probably won't rant about Jay too much in season 4 because I actually don't think he's that bad in season 4. Anyway, I'm just done. I'm so done with this season, and it's like what six more episodes?
Are we there yet?
Are we almost done? So yes, our gentle listeners, this is going to be the next 6 or 7 episodes. Us just begging for the pain to end, and you will have to be with us.
We know where you live.
I hope our pain is entertaining. I just hope that. I hope it makes you giggle.
Alright, that brings Series 3, Episode 46 to a close. Thank you very much to the panel. And if you'd like to take part in a future episode of the podcast, or to even leave us a message, you can contact us via our Facebook page, Instagram, or website. Just search for thetribe.co.uk or Conversations on Eagle Mountain. So we'll see you next time for episode 47. Until then, bye.
Bye.
Bye. T-shirts are coming soon.
And notice how we ended this. It's a cluster, just like season 3 ends. It's thematic.
That's perfect.
I'm like, this just devolved into chaos, but it's just like the end of season 3.